The world isn't Twitter, not yet.
It
right?
is.
Like the world isn't Reddit.
It super is.
It's not.
It is. Absolutely
It's
is.
not.
There is a fundamentally huge problem here that is breaking with people getting ripped away from reality. I understand what you're saying when you say Twitter and the internet isn't real life, but in a way, they've become like a hyper reality where they're more real than the world that we live in. Where if you ask a conservative, like how many trans people are in the United States or what percentage do you do this as trans, they'll say 20%.
How many people have had this done?
If we're talking about the drugs, millions.
Millions of kids on puberty blockers? Millions? Americans think 21% of the population are transgender? That can't.
It says over the last 5 years, there were at least 4,780 adolescents who started puberty blockers and had a prior gender dysphoria.
No.
I could be wrong.
You did a whole documentary on this, didn't you?
Million sounds great.
What you just said terrifies me.
And then also, let me do like just a quick like to drill home like the hyper reality example, okay?
I listened to most of your debate with the professor.
Which one?
That just happened recently. He looked like Gandalf. It was like some wizard in the library. And it was so interesting that in academia, a lot of the time it feels like now that people just accept this knowledge because they've been studying it for so long. And then like when you actually like pin them on a source or pin them on an actual like reference point, they may not be able to do it because they just like they've kind of gotten away with being the authority on it for so long. It's not unlike,
I mean, like, here's the warning I'll say is that, like, it's tempting to believe that. I'm still holding out hope. But, like, there is a lot of, like, knowledge and, like, for instance, like, I'll sit here and say, like, oh, these historians are retarded, blah, 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 blah. Like, look at academia. But the only reason I can say that is because I'm sourcing from other really good historians. So it's
That's
like,
true.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's a double-edged sword, but, yeah.
But the example I would use is, like, you look at, like, a martial arts school, and you get somebody that's, like, acclaimed and like an amazing instructor, right? And they're really well known, and they stop sparring because like one day maybe like a student beats them and like they don't want to look bad, and then like over time they still hold all of that prestige and all of that that like social capital that they built up, but their actual skill and their actual knowledge has declined a lot. But you don't see it because they're not practicing.
Oh, there's a name for this actually that was funny enough in academia, or maybe not necessarily academia. No, I think it would be academia. Is that sometimes somebody will publish a groundbreaking paper or do like a really good piece of work. It happens in journalism too. And then they can float for the rest of their career on that one thing. Glenn Greenwald is a really good example of that. He was the guy that broke like the Snowden stuff because Snowden happened to go to him over it. But in reality, he's retard. He's like a hack. And there's like, and there are journalists like that. There are academics like that. It happens probably in every field where you have like one really big, like groundbreaking landmark thing, but then a lot of your other contributions suck, but people remember you for the one big thing and they still give you a lot of credibility.
Yeah, I'm terrified of that myself, like for that same reason for expertise in terms of marketing and business. I feel like I'm, the moon landing type idea is like, oh, is this the greatest thing I'm going to do? And then like you kind of just like fade into obscurity. It's really, really hard to stay consistently relevant.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
Not just on a social level, but on a professional one.
Yeah. I just wish that like people could recognize that though. Like you do like a thing instead of, and then like, and other people could treat it accordingly. Like, I probably haven't done anything as great as this, or this work is not as good as this, rather than pretending every single new thing you're presenting is like better than the last. Like it feels like every single academic wants to pretend they're always dropping the Marshall Mathers LP2 without realizing that it's never going to be as good as the first one, which it wasn't. So it's like, I don't know.
You know what's interesting though is that I think that there's a pendulum swinging, and that people. One of the things I see on like YouTube and like Twitter Spaces, and I just kind of like, I don't know, tertiarily follow your career. There seems to be a growing sentiment of people that really do want to invest in the facts, and I think that's going to become even more and more true as we go into like a really weird era
AI
of like
and deepfake stuff.
Where it's so difficult to tell what's actually true that the only real recourse we'll have is to depend on like authority type people and influencers, and because like, okay, so like I don't know what we can believe in anymore. We can't believe in government establishments is what everybody says. We can't believe in we can't believe in like people. So what do we believe in? And ultimately a lot of people are turning to influencers like you, and like and unfortunately a lot more influencers that are way less care way less about if what they're saying is true. So I think that what you're doing is paying its dividends both to you and to society in a way, because you're striving to be factual, and that will like reflect in your life positively over time. It has, right?
Yeah, but the at the end of the day, the important thing is the aesthetic, unfortunately. I'm just really good at like making, I guess, like the truthful stuff kind of like flashy. But at the end of the day, it's the aesthetic that people are attracted to. And people generally don't care as much about like the truth stuff. It has to like look good and feel good. And that's like the really important thing. So half the work that I do is like making my stuff feel good, because it's not enough to just be right. You have to be convincing and emotionally appealing.
I think that matters in the short term on the debate floor, where it's like who versus who. And like that is like, that the way I would equate that is that's like the gladiatorial arena, right? That's like Caesar giving the thumbs up and down, where Caesar is the crowd and everyone's like throwing their bread or everyone's cheering you on. But in the macro, that dedication to actual truth and facts is what actually carries your brand.
I mean, you say that, but the issue, do you ever see that I know you watched this, and I'm sure you've heard the concept before, because it seems like some of you would have. Did you see the Veritasium video on like how to practice things or how you learn things or whatever? You know what I'm talking about? He's like, there's 4 things that need to happen for you to learn things. Mm-hmm. I don't remember exactly what the 4 things were, but I know that in concordance with those concepts, it's really important that when you do something, the feedback needs to be immediate. There has to be feedback there. When you're lacking immediate feedback on things, and I think it's one of the 4 things he brings up, when you're lacking immediate like good feedback, so it's accurately punishing or rewarding the type of behavior you're doing, when you're lacking that, humans lose all capacity to regulate behavior. The easiest example of this is dieting, right? Like when you eat good food, it tastes yummy. The feedback is immediate. The negative comes like, 20 years later, or however long it takes to become obese. Same thing with dogs, right? Like sometimes people will come into their house, they see the dog pooped on the floor, they'll go to the next room and they'll try to drag the dog over and hit him. That doesn't matter. If you don't catch your dog right when he does something bad, hitting him doesn't do anything. They can't connect it in their brain. They don't have the thought for it. So I feel like the problem with like being right or being wrong is that correctness or adherence to facts is not usually rewarded, or there's no reward for that right now in the media landscape. The rewards are just for making people feel good. Comporting with reality, like sometimes it feels good, but if it doesn't, you're always going to go with the thing that's more favorable than not. That's why when I hop onto a thing yesterday, like it's unfathomable to me that Andrew Tate wouldn't know anything about Tucker Carlson. That's wild to me that he wouldn't know the first fact about that case, but he felt confident enough to bring it up to me like I wouldn't know anything about it. That's unbelievable to me. And I'm in a room full of people who are like counterculture that don't know anything about the Tucker Carlson Dominion case. That's wild, the Fox News Dominion case. But that's because none of them here are being rewarded for being truthful. They're rewarded for making people feel good about the things they believe in. And,
right.
Yeah.
They're being rewarded in a short term. So let's use your example. So the example you used, right, is dieting, where a person will eat really good food and then they won't like worry about it, and then later they'll get diabetes and fucking die, right? Yeah. And that's 100% true. But what I'm equating this to more is, let's take that same person who's making a decision on whether they should diet or not, and their best friend is a really fit person they spend a lot of time around, and that person has good behaviors. They're waking up at 5 a.m. They're going on runs. They're eating the right food. What I'm saying is like you're more like that person than you are in like the short term. Yeah, like the cookie looks really good, but if you spend a lot of time, there's a Tim Ferriss quote. It's like you're the 5 people you spend the most time around, and a lot of people spend a lot of time with you virtually, and a lot of time with these influencers virtually. As they gravitate towards a person who is more oriented towards getting things right and more oriented towards facts, they themselves lift their character as that rising tide lifts all boats. And so I think at a macroscopic level, what you're doing means more.
Okay, I understand what you're saying. I completely disagree, but I do appreciate
it.
Why? Again, because
I think maybe you're just thinking too much about the show floor.
No, I feel like it is all about the show floor. I feel like it is about the aesthetic. So, for instance, let's say that you took a guy. This is actually super easy. Let's say that you take a guy who is we'll say like 16, 17% body fat, but he has like really good cardio. This guy runs 5Ks at least weekly. His lifts are like decently strong. Maybe he's like balding a little bit, but like for the most part, he lives like a really healthy life. And then let's say you put that guy up to next to another guy who, who's trend and whatever. This guy's like fucking roiding every day. He's like, he looks shredded as fuck. And he's like a little bit funnier. Like people want to emulate that guy more than the other dude every single fucking time. Other guy's 9% body. He looks better. He's fucking leaner. He's more ripped. Like the health aspect here is taking a back seat to the aesthetic of looking healthy, whatever that's supposed to mean, right? Like people will gravitate towards the aesthetic than they would towards the whatever like is actually comporting to healthy reality there. Yeah.
That has been the meta, and what I'm telling you is I think that pendulum is shifting over because I think people are getting done with that fake ass bullshit, and that as time goes on, people will be more and more sensitive to that kind of like fake interpretation. You're always going to get a subset of the population that's going to be more interested in that stuff, but I think that as time goes by and there's more and more disinformation, and there's more and more just like bullshit and time wasting. Like I'll equate this to like, I also think that people are going to kind of wake up and are waking up to like the fact that social media is like a net negative for society. And,
but the problem is
people
like
are making the conscious decision to like disconnect. Yeah,
people are making those statements, but they're not saying them for I think the reasons you would want them to say it. Like for instance, and I've got a direct analogy to this. 7 years ago, my mom told me that she didn't watch Fox News anymore because she stopped trusting it, and I thought that was amazing that she'd made like a huge improvement in her life. But when she said that, what she actually meant was she got all of her news from Facebook now. It wasn't an improvement. When people say things like, I don't trust the media because they lie too much, they don't actually mean, I don't trust the media because they lie too much. What they mean is, I don't trust the media because this particular media is not telling me what I want to hear. Somebody will say, because like, I'll be standing next to somebody and we'll both nod. They'll be like, I think the media lies a lot. And they'll be like, yeah. And I'm like, yeah. And I'm like, I think the media is really bad incentives. And I'm like, yeah. And I'm like, I think we need more oversight into media. And like, yeah. And they're like, and then I'll say like, yeah, this is why I advocate for these structural changes in media. And they'll say like, oh, this is why I only watch Joe Rogan and Tim Pool. I'm like, oh. So there's like, it doesn't really matter at all, like what you said, because whatever outcome, whatever those statements are meaning to you, it's very different than what I mean when I say them, right? It's why like technically in some ways I'm kind of like a centrist-y type person. Like I've got positions from the left to the right. I try to evaluate both positions pretty equally. I'm not like very partisan. I don't think I am, but everybody says that. And I don't say those things to describe myself, because if I hear somebody say them, it's a red flag to me. If somebody says that they're nonpartisan, I instantly know they're the biggest political partisan hack in the fucking world. So like, yeah, so it's like, yeah, it's all like, I think it's all the aesthetic. And I don't see the evidence of like, where are people demanding more fact-based things? Like, I mean, like you look at these, yeah, go ahead.
I can give you a few. Like like if you look at some of the fastest growing podcasts in business and the fastest growing podcasts in the world, actually, they're not like dumb rhetoric podcasts, right? They're things like All In Podcast in Business. They're things like they're things like they're like informative or self-educational, like Chris Williamson or like those guys. Like those guys are shooting up, and I think people are seeking this out because they're seeing that there is. I think people do have less tolerance for this bullshit, and like there's a lot of newsletters. There's a lot more like kind of conglomerate, like congealing is what I'm trying to look for, that word, around this concept that people, and I also think there's two separate things here, right? There is the idea of how a person presents themselves, the roided out, like Annabelle person, but then there's also the actions that people are taking.
Yeah, I guess so. Like the thing that makes me wonder, and I just don't know. You bring up Chris Williamson, and that's a really good example. When I talk to Chris, and we have conversations about like applying a factual, dispassionate lens towards objective analysis of blah 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 blah. Like everything he says, I think I agree with, and everything I say, for the most part, I think he agrees with. But if we start to ground that out in examples, like Chris Williamson's audience hates me. They absolutely hate me and despise me. If you look at the comments on the videos, the last one, yeah, it's all like cuck, wife left him, cuck, bisexual, cuck, loser, liberal, blah, blah, blah. So something is getting lost here to where...
In translation.
Yeah, the problem is that like, I feel like people wear, and I'm not necessarily accusing Chris of doing this because I don't watch or engage enough to know exactly why his audience views the way that it does, but truth right now, and maybe it always has been, is like, it is a nice thing to be truthful, but it's also very nice to appear truthful. Like that aesthetic is very sexy, and people will use it whether they comport with the actual value or not, you know?
Interesting. So why then does that make you focus on just the presentation and show floor rather than like this sort of like, so when I think of things now, right, I'm in this like sphere where everything is branding, and when we are advertising a brand or we're creating a brand, we're advertising a brand, I should say. We're trying to get our customer to feel a certain way about something as a result of a like the total thing that they see. So if I want to like advertise a health supplements brand as authentic, right? I might use words like 100% money back guarantee, or I might use things like lab tested, and like you can go look at those lab results on the website, and that authenticity lends to that brand image, which lends to the demographic of people that are looking for authentic health supplements versus the people that don't care. You see what I'm saying? So I'd say in the exact same way, your branding is increasingly becoming the guy that like really looks into things, and maybe disagree with this, and I'd be interested if you do. But to me, as an outsider, you are doing more to try to find out the actual facts behind things than the vast majority of people you're debating. And what I'm trying to say is, do you think that has some kind of positive impact overall versus like this show floor stuff where you got a guy yelling you down about like
Yeah, I mean, I hope it does. I hope it's doing something positive overall. But I don't think that I'm not just popular because of that, though. Like, my main popularity comes from my stage presence. Like, my hot take on like Donald Trump, and I don't know, I think the future will vindicate me. I think the number one reason why Donald Trump was president and why he's as popular as he is because he's really funny. He works an audience really well. That guy on stage, the jokes that he tells, the ad-libbing, the improving, the nicknames for people, he's just really good at working a crowd. And I legitimately believe that is the majority reason for why he's popular. There are other aspects too, the anti-establishment thing, you know, echoing people's complaints about the system. But like when you start to break that down even a little bit, like factually, it falls apart faster than a Chris Nolan movie. Like when you look at the idea that like, oh, like tell me about like the Republicans. Well, they had the Tea Party and they really didn't trust, you know, like the mega corporations, and they didn't trust like all the wealthy elites and the billionaires. And it's like, oh wow, well who do they turn to? Well, a billionaire liberal developer from New York City who's had a silver spoon in his mouth his entire life and is currently one of the wealthiest. Like factually, it falls apart immediately, right? But then when you like, he's really funny on stage and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, I get it, right? Yeah, so I think that what I do is hopefully important, and I hope that people take good things from me, but at the end of the day, I have to be able to dress it up really well too. And so the outfit options are limited when you're trying to be truthful because there's a lot of stuff that you can't engage in that other people do, so it's more challenging, I think, but yeah.
Wait, why?
Well, because like I have to avoid like there's a lot of like flashy like morally loaded statements that people can make, or a lot of bullshit appeals that people can make, and so like for like one. Like an example of this would be like one issue that I have a lot is like how appropriately can I hedge in a conversation? Like if somebody asks me, let's say I'm against an interlocutor who is a retard, but he has no problem 100% signing off on every statement, and he asks me, what do you think is going to happen if this happens? Well, if I'm answering honestly, I'd be like, well, I mean, like I would hope that this would happen. I mean, I can't know for sure, blah, blah. And he goes, well, if that happens, I know for sure this will happen. And it's like, okay, well, I hedged, and in a factual world, I should be rewarded for my hedging, but the reality is nobody's going to remember if this guy's wrong. So he takes a stronger position. He looks better in the debate. I look like a weak pussy. And then time goes on. I might be right. He might be wrong. Even if he fades out of existence, another strong character will replace him who also like makes bad predictions, because nobody's actually held to account for their bad predictions, because you're not rewarded for being truthful or not. You're rewarded for how you make people feel. People remember how Tim Pool made them feel when he said Trump was going to win in a 50-state landslide, and that made them feel good, but they don't hold him accountable for being wrong.
But so many of these people have faded out of existence while you've been consistent over the course of a decade.
True, but there's always a new one to take their place. That's the issue. There's always another one to step up.
But why do you think those people are fading and you aren't?
Probably because at some point, like there's a lot of different reasons. One is because they usually come and go with communities. They don't build their own community. They just come with like movements. So when the movement leaves, they leave. A lot of people can't deal with the stresses or pressures of being like scrutinized publicly a lot. A lot of people can't handle the hate. A lot of people just can't like work that hard or that much for a long period of time. A lot of people can't stay relevant and reinvent themselves, so they get stuck on one side. Like there's a million reasons why people fade out, but it's not because like, oh, this guy wasn't credible enough and he was wrong too much. It's usually because like he, you know, tried to molest a 15-year-old, or he like got in some stupid drama, or just got tired of it, or whatever. Yeah.
So if that is your belief, like why not just go for full meme war and like just absolutely blast everybody?
Because I like to hope at the end of the day that there's like some virtue in being correct, and that humans and like the honorific version of like a human brain is the one that like tries to best exemplify like the biggest strengths of human rationality.
So
and
so you do hold this value, right?
Yeah, I believe in it, but like but I recognize that like it's a very queer, unnatural thing, right? Like there's a reason why you have to learn logic in class, and it doesn't just come to you naturally. It's funny because people will say common sense, but the reality is like critical thought and logic are anything but common. That's why you have to learn them. It's a learned skill. Yeah. So yeah, it's just it's
strange how you hold this value introspectively. You see this value in yourself and you aspire to it, but you don't think that it matters on a macro level.
I think it matters on a macro level, but you have to push people.
You think it pales in comparison to stage presence, though?
Yeah, I think the stage presence is way more important, and that's why the stage presence is important. Like, and you can't ignore it. Yeah.
What do you think of brands that don't have any stage presence and yet are like household names for like how they make you feel? Then
can you give me examples of this?
Any Fortune 500, like Amazon, or like where it's like, okay, the idea of this is like, I'm going to get my package in 2 days. And I'm going to get basically everything I want.
Yeah, the difference there is that they're delivering something. If you're working in a world, remember what I said before is the immediate reward or punishment. If you're living in a world where the good or service is highly tangible, then you can get by being good because it's immediately noticeable, right? So for Amazon, you can't lie your way into 2-day shipping, right? That's the thing that Amazon did and the whole world adopted because it was just really good, right? Yeah.
So let me use a better example then. What about like Supreme? where there isn't actually like intrinsic value, but they're offering like a feeling. The brand is like a feeling, and yet they still have no stage presence. Not really, right? Like it's just that the brand is like a super luxury idea, and that brand like carries a certain feel for people.
Well, like it's hard for me to analyze this because you're asking me to talk about an aesthetic for a clothing company, which is literally an aesthetic. So like there is a reward for Supreme. When you buy it, you instantly feel good and you have it because people see you wearing Supreme, right? Like isn't that?
Yeah. That's the idea, but still they're carrying like a brand presence that creates that by virtue of like the culture that they've cultivated. You see, and so I guess what I'm trying to
but no part of that relies, like if anything, this relies on, I don't want to say untruth this is like social conception, but if anything that's different than, or it's the same as what I'm saying for like truth commentators. Like it's about like the social perception. Like it's operating on the same thing. Like if I wear like a Donald Trump hat or a Joe Rogan outfit or some shit, like I'm communicating that I like the same things that you like. And so we all wear them. We all support each other for it, but not necessarily. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
The analogy I'm trying to tie, maybe unsuccessfully, is that a brand can successfully create a feeling to a person that stands outside of any kind of stage presence that brand has. It doesn't have to be represented by a person. It doesn't have to be represented by like somebody saying something or somebody being extreme or whatever. A brand can create an idea in somebody's mind that then they attach to.
Yeah.
And I think you are both a person and a presence, but you are also a brand.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying, but I don't know how that contradicts with anything I said before. The branding is like when you have this particular thing, these are the things that it makes you feel. So when you watch Tim Pool, when you listen to Donald Trump, when you watch whatever Tanky, like they're making you feel a certain thing, and that's at the end of the day, that's the most important thing is the feeling, not the factual part, because there is
So I'm seeing where you're going. And so let's take that and say, do you think that the feeling of feeling like you are getting accurate data matters? That you're getting accurate information? That you're getting something that is data backed, empirically researched, etc.
The feeling of that? Yes, the feeling of that matters, yes.
Okay, so we're on the same page then. Because do you believe that you providing that feeling then is like growing you and a major reason why a lot of people follow you?
Maybe. So what I'm a little bit, but so what I'm saying is, okay, this is going to get really weird. Okay. You know, Jews are like, it's like a people and a religion.
This might get weird. I'm
okay.
with you.
It's like multiple things. Okay. So it's kind of weird. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
So, like, I think that truth truth is like a thing that I don't think people care about, but the aesthetic of truth people really like, but you can use truth to actually, like, if you are truthful, you can use that to have the aesthetic of being truthful. But
I completely understand.
Yeah, but you have to engage with the aesthetic, because you can be very truthful and not engage in the aesthetic part at all, and people won't see you as truthful at all. Or you can use almost no truth, but heavily engage in the aesthetic of truth, and then you will be seen as incredibly trustworthy, right? So it depends on, like there's very little connection with the actual truth itself, and then the actual aesthetic of truth, even though it seems like there would be, but there's really just not. Yeah.
Well, so someone like, sorry to bring up Voldemort, but like someone like Jordan Peterson,
you can bring up
or the religion, or like the religious argument would be that there's an intrinsic value in that truth, that by somebody upholding their moral character and their ability to tell the truth and focusing really hard on that, God, now I'm sounding like a fucking person shaking a stick, but like to use a really bad example, because I don't have anything better right now. It's like that reptilian thing in your brain where you are looking at that person and saying, okay, that person is aspiring to greater moral values. And I feel that.
I understand. I understand what you're saying, but
does that have value?
I would navigate this. Like we would have to go really big into, like the language that you're saying is what I would start to take issue with. When you say that, like, well, people value Jordan Peterson because they feel like he embodies truth.
No, I'm saying this is a concept of his. He believes. Sorry, not Jordan Peterson the person. Jordan Peterson believes there's intrinsic value in truth by virtue of truth itself.
Correct. But I think that the complicated things. I understand, but I think that statement is an aesthetic. I don't think that statement comports with reality. I think that statement itself is an aesthetic, which makes it complicated. So like a really good example of this, in my opinion, is people will tell you to be compassionate or forgiving. And I think almost everybody on the planet would agree that forgiveness and compassion are values, right? We would all agree with that, right?
Yes.
But I don't believe most people believe that. I think the vast majority of people believe that those things are just an aesthetic, to be a forgiving person. But,
can we roll with this?
Yeah. Can I give you an example and then you can...
Yeah. I was going to give you an example too.
Okay, go.
Okay, because we exalt Buddhist monks, for example, on that exact virtue. And we look at those people as paragons and guides, well, the East more so than the West, but everybody looks at those people as paragons because of that exact thing. So doesn't that exist?
No. Okay.
It doesn't-
Let me move
Mm.
because Buddhist is like a whole legendary fucking thing. So let's move. Let's move to
do you
like
mean?
like if you're how many people in the West have seen like a Buddhist monk? Like never, right? So I'm so
Okay, but the Western equivalent is the properties that Jesus teaches of forgiveness and
sure.
compassion.
Jesus
in the Bible,
died 2,000 years ago. Okay, let's fuck these people. Okay, here let me really
Bible still. I can pick up a Bible
really-
in 5 minutes. I mean,
Sure, that's fine. I mean, the Bible's a good example. We can go into that, but let me use this thing and I'll ground this out, and then you'll understand because we can do Jesus too, because that works also perfectly. I think to illustrate my point. All right. So if we talk about like compassion and forgiveness are incredibly important values. Every person will agree with this. Okay, religious people agree with this, right? Especially, right? We should be compassionate. We should forgive people, right? Let's say that you have a guy that raped a kid. Do you think that this guy should ever be forgiven? The answer is no. Immediately, he should actually be murdered and cut into pieces. What about somebody that raped a woman? What about somebody that like murdered, like 2 high schoolers, right? When people say that compassion and forgiveness are important aspects to a human, they like the aesthetic of it. But when you look at how people practice compassion and forgiveness, the majority of the time when it's practiced, it's usually on things that don't need compassion or forgiveness. Very, very rarely is somebody actually exercising compassion or forgiveness in a way towards when people need it. When people say they want to be compassionate, usually they're talking about people that you instantly have like an empathetic reaction towards. Like, oh, we need to be compassionate towards these people that are dying of disease. Well, yeah, of course, you look at them, obviously, right? But like, they don't need compassion. They just need like funding and help. What about like people that get locked in jail for doing horrific things? These are truly people that need forgiveness or compassion. Or what about people that have, but when it comes to like extending compassion or forgiveness to those people, no, those people deserve everything they have coming towards them. We only extend forgiveness towards people who really generally don't need it. And I think that's like a good example of like they like the aesthetic of it, but the actual practicing of it, when it becomes uncomfortable, is not any fun. It doesn't feel good.
I do see what you're saying. I would say that, like, let's use that as same example of I feel like we're in 2005 of our philosophical discussions because of the raping kids thing comes up.
We can do raping adults, so that makes it better. Go ahead.
Or whatever it was that or 2012, whenever we met. No. Like, let's take the murdering example of how I think this is happening all the time in our society and in the West. And based on the values of religion and just general moral character, people are forgiving and people are compassionate. These things that a lot of times that like the healing process of a murderer comes and somebody and kills a family member. So many times when like going through and you get deep with somebody, the way they end up at true healing is by forgiving that person. And that doesn't mean that you don't jail them, that you don't punish them, that they aren't that
Sure,
could be
I don't
two separate
disagree.
things.
I don't disagree with you that this happens sometimes in isolated events, but like I can use this example like very clearly. How many times on Reddit does that same clip get posted where there's a guy being escorted to a courthouse, I think, who beat some rape murder charges on a guy's daughter, and the father walks out and shoots the dude in the head? If you look at the top comments every single time, he deserved it. I would have done the same thing. But hats off to this guy. I'm applauding this dude. So happy he got. I could probably search for this thread on Reddit. Man shoots.
Wait, no, I know what you're saying.
Yeah. So you're going to see this every single time. Like nobody is. Yeah.
You're going to see it, but this is where I think I'm going with this is that something that happened to me when I got offline. So like the last 2 or 3 years, I just have basically had no stage presence quote, right? Like I used to have a lot, relative to like not a lot compared to you or someone, but like I had some, and now I have none. And one of the things that I see in the real world when people are doing volunteer work or people are doing like things in the day, like in the day in the life, compassion and forgiveness is actually everywhere. And it's like people are compassionate about people that are less advantaged because they're out there serving food or they're out there doing something. And these small events are in like everyday life, hidden in like the subset that you don't see on top comments on Reddit, because that's just a bunch of like greased up nerds that hate reality and have like gone back down into their dungeon to goblin out because they've lost faith in the world. I don't think that represents the majority of humanity now.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'll agree with that. I think it happens at times, but I don't know if it's the mainstream. Like that feeling of like to forgive somebody or to be compassionate. That's like it's an uncomfortable thing that you have to work through if you're truly exercising it in a virtuous way, right?
It's
like
uncomfortable
forgiveness and compassion don't feel good like eating a candy bar. They feel good like going to the gym and like having like a more fulfilling long-term reward that usually requires some short-term friction or discomfort, right? I
don't know. I think that a lot of our base society, like when you get off the internet, you get off all of these things, and you start going into these like communities and like how we're actually like you go into the workplace, you're living every day. I think that these small things are being just like little like back and forth. So just little they're hidden in the cracks. They're hidden in the subset society. But it's like it's something that I didn't notice until I got offline. And now I think it's everywhere. And I think that our entire society runs on basic compassion and forgiveness at every level. And without it, we would be like, man, the online world paints a dystopian reality. But like the world isn't Twitter. Not yet.
It
right?
is.
Like the world isn't Reddit.
It super is.
It's not.
It is. It absolutely is.
It's not. I think the reason you think that is because you're in this 24/7.
Okay. I think that all of the protests on all of the college campuses that are like ravaging the United States
of the people that are. It's not ravaging. What percentage of
it's headline news like internationally right now.
Of course, because the media has bought it, and like that's. But again, like what percentage of students are protesting? 1%.
It's going to be a small percentage of people, but that's how media and everything has always worked, right?
But we're not talking about media. We're talking about the innate idea of compassion and forgiveness in society, and if it exists over like this sort of dystopian Reddit reality. You're telling me that you think that this is everywhere and that you think that Reddit and Twitter is reality. And what I'm telling you is that it's maybe 0.5% or 0.2% of protesters that are bowing to Islam. And by the way, those people will just give up when the next cool thing comes along, Occupy Seattle or whatever the fuck it's going to be, right? And meanwhile, 99% of people are going to class, picking up somebody's papers that fell over and moving on, like that kind of thing. That's what I'm saying. I don't think that like it's so easy.
If what you were saying is true, like people like Donald Trump would be unelectable. So something is broken here. Something is breaking. Something is like the types of things that he says or the types of things that he supports. Like if you tell me like 10 or 15 years ago, well, actually we all thought this with like the Donald, the subreddit, or like 4chan. It's like, okay, yeah, like he's like a meme candidate, but like there's no way he actually has widespread support. But he does. He has like religious followers that are literally ready to follow him off the end of the fucking earth or to the end of our republic, whichever comes first. Like literally, not like only on Twitter, not only online, but it's something like 75% of Republicans don't think the results of the last election were legitimate. Right? There is a fundamentally huge problem here that is breaking with people getting ripped away from reality. Like I understand what you're saying when you say Twitter and the internet isn't real life, but in a way they've become like a hyper reality where they're more real than the world that we live in. Where if you ask a conservative, like how many trans people are in the United States or what percentage do this as trans, they'll say 20%.
How many people have had this done?
Depends on what. I don't think we have exact numbers, but if we're talking about the drugs, millions.
Millions? How did you do a whole documentary on this and you're like 4 orders of magnitude off? Millions of kids on puberty blockers? Millions?
You're talking about hormone blockers?
Yeah.
Millions of kids have been on hormone blockers? Really?
I'm sure someone's going to fact check me on that, but my guess is that we're into the millions now at this point. Yeah.
You know what? I actually am glad he said that. That is your guess. That truly shows what your state of mind is and how disconnected you are from reality, if that's what you feel, right? I like asking engaging questions like what is the percentage of people that you think are this? And somebody's like, 98% of people probably feel this way. And it's like, okay, well, we looked at the data and it's actually like 12%. I think you're a little bit disconnected, buddy. Millions of children on puberty blockers? How many children are even in the U.S.? Like, what is the total number of people from like age 18 and below? How many minors in the United States? What would I look for? What's the number here? There's about like 75 million. So if he says millions, he thinks what, like 5% of kids are on puberty blockers?
Be my guess. I can say for double mastectomies, I read a report recently that there were over 1,000 done between 2016 and 2019. And when you compare that to how many were done between, 2008 and 2015, it's a massive increase. And over 1,000 girls had gender affirming double mastectomies in that time frame.
And when you
But
say girls, you're talking about prepubescent?
right, minors. And that's just up until 2019. And then we know that there's been this exponential increase with all this stuff year over year. So it's a lot. It's too many. Having this happen to one kid is way too many. It's a lot more than one.
Yeah, look, if you're an adult and you want to do that and you understand who you are and what you are.
Hold on, no shot. Americans think 21% of the population are transgender? That can't. What? 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 No shot. I would have to. I'm curious where this polling data comes from. No way. That's insane. I can't believe that. Have a household income over $1 million? No shot. Are Native American 27%? 30% are Jewish? No. This has to be. I don't know where this came from, but this is some wacky shit. This is a wacky poll. No way. This has got to be a wacky poll. I don't think I trust this. I don't even know if even if I read where it came from, I don't think I would believe it. How could you simultaneously believe that 20% of the population has a household income over $1 million, but only 38% has a household income over $100,000? Like, this doesn't even make sense. You think there are more people that are making over $1 million than there are people between like the 100,000 to 900? Like, this is just so weird. I don't know. Thank you for voting, A Boy Called Sue. We all thank you for your service.
And this is how you feel you should progress. You're an adult. This is a free country. You should be able to do whatever you want. But when you're talking about doing that to children, the fact that so many people are on board and so many people are angry, if you have, like, people are going to be angry at us that we're having these conversations.
Yeah, they will be. And I also, I actually think that that this shouldn't be happening to.
It's a very small number, if that's right.
It says over the last 5 years, there were at least 4,780 adolescents who started puberty blockers and had a prior gender dysphoria diagnosis.
This says it's kind of undercounted, but
that would be a big
less than
undercounting.
1,000 people a year.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would guess, hundreds of thousands at this, but I could be wrong.
You did a whole documentary on this, didn't you? How do you not have any background information at all about any of this? Did you do any reading, any research, anything at all?
Million sounds great.
And that is their reality. And then they vote and they move through the world and they act in accordance with that reality, even if it's not real. But that hyper reality that's created by social media becomes more real than the world that they inhabit.
I really understand what I feel like I understand what you're saying. I don't.
Like, here's a really good example.
Yeah.
No conservative knows somebody that's died from a vaccine injury. Truly, I don't believe it. No shot. 0% chance.
Really?
No, absolutely not. But look how many of them think they do, or say they know like 3 or 4. I've talked to a guy that says he knew 4 people. I think this is online. Where was it? A guy that said he knew like 3 or 4 people that died from vaccine injuries. No, you don't. That's insane. What are the chances that there's no shot, right? But people think they do, and so that new reality that's being created by social media is overriding like the current reality that they see, and it's affecting people in real life. Like, it's insane.
I agree that it's affecting So when we get into political discourse, I don't think I have any ground there. I think that like political discourse is really weird, and like how we elect people is really weird, and probably how we elect people has always been weird, and that's why Jefferson said that the only people that should vote are the people that own land, right? Like I don't know, like I can't get into that. That's somewhere you will absolutely just annihilate me. I have no knowledge of like the political landscape. But what I can say is that I feel like that person that thinks that this is, and just blow me out of the water if this is wrong, but I feel like that person. I'm in Texas now. Okay, I got a lot of people like that I do business with that are like, maybe think that 30% of the country is trans. They get in their truck, they go to work, they do the shit they're supposed to do, and they go home. And yes, they hold those beliefs, but they maintain a functional society through what they do and their actions. And that's not to say that no harm ever comes of it, but I think the picture that's not being painted is this like crumbling Roman Empire that like is on the verge of civil war. I just don't see it.
I don't think we're on the verge. I don't think we're on the. I don't think we're on the verge of.
Because I want to acknowledge I could be ignorant, and that's why
like I would agree with you. Like 5 or 10 years ago, when people are when people are like saying that Twitter's not real life, I agreed with that. Like 5 or 10 years ago, but or at least 10 years ago. But people are increasingly making decisions and changing the way that they behave in real life, and their reality is being more reflective of the things that they see online. Like. Here's 2 examples I can think of, even outside of the COVID stuff. Oh my God, I just had one. Sorry, say something else.
Well, I feel like if this were the case, we would be seeing this reflected in like the macro statistics of the world. Like, and if you look at like Stephen Pinkerton's research on like better angels of our nature, right? You'd see things like crime rates are going down overall, not up. Obesity is going up, unfortunately, but like rate of people that are starving in the world is going down. We've lifted more people out of poverty in the last decade than we've lifted in all time. The world as a whole seems to be moving in a more positive direction. And these individual use cases.
Okay, sorry.
Like
okay, hold on.
I
remember. Sorry. Okay. Okay. So like. One of these might be that we have like crazy people that say crazy things and it's politics and you go online and maybe it's just about foreign policy or blah, 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 whatever, right? But so like one example would be during the, I don't know how you feel about COVID, so I'm trying not to step on any toes I don't know where your beliefs are on that. But like,
I'm an open book, dude.
Okay,
like,
sure.
Yeah, we haven't talked in a long time, but you know me. I'm not,
sure, yeah.
Whatever you want to say.
On the COVID stuff, there are real differences in vaccine rates between conservatives and liberals, and there are real differences in fatality rates as a result of that. So that's an example of people who are completely basing their opinion on online stuff are making decisions that are leading to them dying in real life. And the vaccine uptake on conservatives it is like statistically significant and somewhat significantly different, effect size different between the 2 groups, and it results in deaths. Right? So that's an example of like online discourse, or like parts of these where measles are coming back. This is an example of like online discourse, which I thought was like only online, is like manifesting in ways where people are making measurably different decisions in terms of the things that they trust. That would be one example. Yeah, go ahead.
What percentage of people got vaccinated in the United States for COVID? Do you know?
Let me check. Hold
Total.
On. Percentage of conservatives versus liberals who got...
No, not just overall.
Ever? It's probably very, very high because at childhood you're mandatory.
COVID vaccination only.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's what I'm checking. Hold on.
So I've got 81% of the population received at least 1 dose. And 70% of the population is considered fully vaccinated.
Okay.
So that's just, I don't know if actually, it's from like usafacts.org. I have no idea if that's
shit.
true.
Okay, so I was going to say like, what if it was like this? And now I read the numbers and it looks like it is like this. So like,
yeah.
So wait. No. Bad. Oh, hold on. So let me just read this paragraph. Of Americans surveyed from September 13th to 22nd, 72% of adults 18 and older had been vaccinated. Okay. Which seems like an okay number. But contrast these converging figures with disparities based on politics. 90% of Democrats were vaccinated compared to 58% of Republicans.
Yeah.
That's a huge difference. That's significant. That's a big difference in numbers.
It is.
So that means almost half of Republicans don't trust like a COVID vaccine.
I am very scared of that. I am that what you just said terrifies me.
And then also let me do like just a quick like to drill home like the hyper reality example. Okay, my parents. Okay, my dad has a vaccine injury. Okay, so both my parents were in the Air Force, right? You were this, or I don't know. Yeah, both my parents were in the Air Force. When my dad was going, I don't know if you know this or not, but when you do basic, or wait, did you?
You get a shit ton of vaccinations.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and my dad had an injury, permanent muscle necrosis or death in his deltoid, so he can't really lift his arm above his shoulder well, and he gets paid disability from the Air Force. There's like 40% like disability paycheck as part of his retirement pension, right? Despite that, we have always gotten every single shot, no matter what. It's never even been a question. The idea that my mom would have us not getting vaccinated is unfathomable. She would have fought you to the death on that. My babies are always getting vaccinated, right? For the COVID vaccine, now that my mom is a full-on Trump, et cetera, we had 2 or 3 family members die from COVID. My mom is not COVID vaccinated. She will never get that vaccine because she doesn't trust it. My dad had to for his job. And for a while, my mom would like jokingly stick magnets on my dad to see if they stuck. I don't think she was actually joking. But that's an example, in my mind, that's a really great example of the reality versus the hyper-reality. The reality was, even when my dad had a vaccine injury, her children all still got vaccinated. But now in this new world she lives in, where the COVID vaccine is more vaccinated, more trusted, more than any other vaccine has ever been done, like there's like been billions of doses of these, she doesn't trust it because of the new reality that's been spun for her by social media. Like, that's insane to me. And I could say like, well, it's just my parents are especially crazy. But then I like just reading from this thing, just looking at this, like 58% of Republicans trust this vaccine. That's wild.
Yeah. So a couple of things on this. The first thing is I think you're absolutely right on the inference of like. Let me just ask one more question before I say this.
Yeah, go for it.
Do you believe that this whole phenomenon was propagated and started online? This specifically what we're talking about with the COVID vaccine. That the online misinformation was what led all of these people, or do you think it was like word of mouth type of like just sort of like feeling of like, well, goddamn, I don't trust that damn COVID vaccine. I heard from my cousin's sister that ain't good. You know, like,
we can get into it. We can get into it more if you want to, but in my opinion, the online world creates a unique reality that has never existed before. So yeah, I think the online has significantly and uniquely contributed to this. Probably maybe in a way that radio or newspapers or letters did in the past, but uniquely different. Yeah.
Okay, I'll just trust that. And so if we go with that, then I totally accept that instance of online reality imprinting over into the world in the negative. And that worries me a great deal. I don't know that exemplifies, that encapsulates the idea that the entire online, that like what you suggested, which is like that we basically are like that like the online reality is like the astral plane where like it's just layered over on top of us and we're one-to-one with it and there's like nothing we can do to get out. Like that doesn't seem to be the case to me.
Okay, I would hope not, but I feel like that's constantly the direction we're going on. That the online world is more real than the real world. That's what I think a lot of people are starting to see. Yeah.
And this is actually kind of goes full circle, and I'm glad we're back here. What I'm trying to tell you is I think there's a pendulum that is running back the other way of people that are sick of that.
What's that? Wait, who? Where can I see this at? If I'm looking for it,
in the uptick of subscriptions to legit podcasts that are following empirical data, in the uptick of newsletters, the uptick of like faith in like media, like ground news, right? Which is I believe a sponsor of yours, right? And the uptick of those.
Yeah, but like, again, even for that, I think
stuff is.
Yeah, but I think it's the
and the dissolution. Wait, sorry. We're going. And the dissolution of traditional media. The examples that we use, the traditional media is falling off a cliff, right? Like I think people are getting tired of that bullshit, and that as we see more like AI and stuff like come in and Sora come in and things like that, people be like, "Fuck, I just want authentic sources."
I disagree. They're saying the words that you're saying, but I don't know if they believe the things that you're purporting. So somebody will say like this, I'm the best example of this. Somebody will say, I love Destiny. He's like such a truth sayer. I really agree with a lot of what he says. You go, oh, like, well, with what? And I've watched people say this. They'll say things like, Destiny, it was like so right on Rittenhouse, and Destiny is so correct when he looks at like Israel-Palestine, and I really like how he holds the far left to account, but he really misses the mark when he talks about Trump. I think he has Trump derangement syndrome, and he's like super off. Like for some reason, he's really critical of the government, when they fuck up in terms of like, he'll talk about like structural disadvantages sometimes, but damn, he like believes the government when it comes to like the FDA and Fauci, and like sometimes he's really, really smart when he pushes against like DEI and like affirmative action and shit, but then he'll say like really weird things like the illegal immigration is a problem. So like people will have these really strong opinions like, I love Destiny because he's a truth sayer, he's really logical and valid, but they don't actually mean that. What they mean is they really like it when I support the things that they like, because when I do it, it's really good because of the way that I back up and research my things. But as soon as I step outside of the things that they like, I'm like, oh God, he's got derangement syndrome on this thing. And it's interesting. It's like, you've heard of the gentleman amnesia thing, right?
where
No.
a guy reads a paper, believes what's on page 1, 2, 3, 4, gets to page 5. He's an architectural engineer, and he reads an article on a bridge, and he's like, oh my God, everything they're saying is wrong and stupid. I know exactly what they're talking about. It's totally wrong. And then when he flips the page, he believes everything he reads on 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, right?
Yeah. Okay.
So it's the same thing with me, where people will look at me and they're like, God, I agree with all these things that Destiny says, and it's so cool, and I like his thought process for this. But then as soon as it switches to a topic where they disagree with my conclusion, all of a sudden I'm a sellout. I'm bought and paid for. Like, I have no idea what I'm talking about. I'm engaged in propaganda. Yeah, and it's like, so I don't even know how many people watch me for like past the aesthetic of truth versus like, yeah.
So you're saying that they don't actually purport to follow they say that they're going to follow the value of like truth seeking and empirical data, but only insofar as they can throw you. There's only insofar as they can get the ideas that you are saying and that they agree with.
Correct.
Innately.
So in some ways,
how do people change their opinions at all ever?
I think it has to do with like I think it's a slow process over time, and it has to do with like the social groups that they're a part of. And I think that's why the internet has been really harmful, is because we can choose too carefully our social groups instead of being forced to deal with the people around you and have to come to terms.
This
with
is your
different
fuck toasters example, right? Isn't
yeah, that now we've got the ability to self-select at way too high of a level online, and it's ruining our ability to deal with different people. And it's only getting, I feel like it's getting worse and worse. But yeah.
And you see that's as a one-to-one crossover into the real world, that like basically it's so bad that like almost all human behavior in the real world is influenced by online stuff.
Hey, that's what it's starting to feel like. Like, how many people are scared? How many people are scared of like trans people in the bathrooms raping kids? Like, has this ever happened?
There's a lot.
I think it's a big driver for a lot of policy and votes, and people have the feeling of it. Go ahead.
This is where we disagree. It's like, I just don't think that the vast majority of these like political, I could be completely fucking wrong, but like, if you, and I hate using anecdotes. I've been trying not to use anecdotes in this conversation, but I'm going to use one.
That's fine.
Which is like, how often, maybe you in your like debate sphere and like kind of how you travel and the space you're in, but how many people, like, I've never heard, and I'm in fucking Texas, I'm in like backwater Dallas, I have never heard somebody be like, yeah, I don't know about them gays. Like, it's like they might have the opinion, they might like, or like trans people or whatever, but it doesn't come out in practice in like daily life. And in the exact same way that you said, I don't think you would find a person who actually knows somebody that has been killed by the COVID vaccine.
Yeah, you wouldn't, but they would still feel it. That you should ask them sometime. You should say, like, oh, just curious, what are your thoughts on this? That might, because how often does like a conversation of a gay or trans person bathroom even come up, right? You might not have any idea what I think about it.
But that's kind of the point, is that like in our actual society, everyone's just kind of trying to get by. And like people are going to work, coming back, and like there's sort of this like surface level conversation about these things, but actionably it's not influencing us, right?
Yeah, but but at the end of the day, when we vote, we're voting on the reality thing is real though, and that's impacting the whole country and everything we do.
What I'm saying is like if I were to see this, I would expect in the trans example, okay, that in Texas, I would be going into stores quite regularly, and people would be like, "No trans, you can't come in here." And I'm sure you'd be able to go find a sign that says that on Reddit, because I've even seen that on Reddit, where I've seen like, "No trans people allowed," nothing like that. No Chinese people allowed, like kung fu, whatever. I've never seen that, and I've never known.
I remember when I lived in Huntington Beach. I feel like I saw a restaurant that I was like a walking distance from, where they had a sign that said, I don't remember if it said "No vaccinations" or it might have said "No masks allowed." I think it was during COVID. They had that sign outside. They're like, "No masks allowed." It was something really retarded. This might have gone on the news even, but I lived in Huntington Beach near this place. Like, I mean, you might not see it as overtly, but even if you don't, and I think in some places you do, but even if you don't, like, people are voting based on those feelings, and people are navigating reality based on those feelings. They might not have an opinion that you know about, but they might still think it, right?
Yeah, and I guess what I'm trying to separate is, do you think that you do think those opinions are influencing our actual reality, that our day-to-day life as we go on, those opinions are being influenced? Like, if
yes.
So let's just use an example. Let's say that Republicans, you said there were like 70% of Republicans think that like 30% of people are trans or something like that. Yeah. Or let's just go with an arbitrary. It doesn't matter. How does that directly influence like what's happening in real life?
It's going to depend on it's going to depend on your engagement. Like if you've got kids, well, now it's going to come up in every single time you go to a school board meeting and you find out your kid is learning something in class. So over COVID, when for the first time ever, parents were probably looking at the curriculum that was their kids were actually going through. Now all of a sudden parents have huge opinions on what's appropriate in terms of like class. And then you see school boards, and then you see entire states, in the case of Florida, sometimes passing like curriculum regulations on like, can you teach gay authors? Like that would be one example of it manifesting. Because I think there's like a corruption going on of their children. Or like how many people are
losing their fucking minds over, the drag like reading hours and shit, like stuff that like I don't know if anybody would have given. Like, bro, I grew up in a Christian Catholic. I grew up in a Catholic household. If there was like some guy that dressed up as a woman and like I think my mom would look at it as like, that's kind of weird, right? But if they were like reading books, I don't even know if my parents would have given a fuck, right? Like you wouldn't even think twice about like, who the fuck cares? But now it's like a fucking ride or die. Like this is the fucking Alamo grandstand that you're gonna fight to the death on. And it's like, I don't know, like all of that, people's opinions have gotten so shaped. I do agree that sometimes there's not a lot of super real world crossover. Like your opinion on like Palestine or Israel might not be something you confront with on a daily basis, but you vote accordingly. And there are some things like whether or not you get vaccinated or whatever that are going to be influenced by those political decisions. I think it does happen. It's a little bit harder to see, but I think it definitely is happening.
Yeah, you've given some compelling examples. I mean, the COVID vaccine one is a slam dunk. Just the idea that is directly influencing the amount of deaths that we have in the country, and that's really concerning. And
I know
also
I've got like personal people who I
know.
know are like, and not to sound fuck. I know multiple people at this point who are talking about like buying houses. Have we talked about? Are you in the camp that like buying a house is always the best investment with your money or whatever? Or
no?
Okay, yeah. I know at least 2 or 3 people now that I've talked to who are like buying houses for what they are like kind of saying are good financial, but it's political because they've seen in the media so much that like the gap between like renters and owners and buyers and people that just have to move from apartment to apartment, like it's growing, and they're making like financial decisions based off of that. Like they're starting to, and I'm like, bro, why are you buying out? Do you even know you're gonna be here for a long time? I was like, no, but I know that it's like, holy shit. Like people are making decisions like that. Or like, look at all the people complaining about like, I'm gonna trigger the fuck out of my audience. But I was vindicated, so I was right. Like people complaining about inflation or people complaining about like the rising cost of everything. People will say shit in chats even though it's not real. They'll say things like eggs used to cost like $2 a carton and now they're $12 a carton. Milk used to cost like, $1.50 a gallon and now it's like $17. You're like, where do you fucking live? What are you talking about? Like, how can you not see these prices reflected in anything? How is it that simultaneously all the wages have fallen, all of the rent has become unaffordable, all of the food has 2x'd in price, but businesses like DoorDash and Uber Eats are booming? Something isn't making sense here, right? Like, how is it happening? But people will walk around with that idea in head, like, everything is hyperinflated to fuck. Like, do you even remember what you paid for gas like 2 years ago? Like, and it's the hyper reality is overriding like the real world, like in terms of how people are like seeing the world or making decisions. It's insane.
So do you expect on a macro level that things like crime rates, things like so the way that we measure a healthy society, do you expect those things to continuously go down as a result of
I'm not
like what you're
what's going to happen
about?
I think that it's the hyper reality like grows different from the normal reality. I mean eventually like I'm sure there's a million quotes about this, but like the truth always catches up to you, or in that Chernobyl show, what does he say? Like lying incurs a debt that eventually has to be paid. Like it will correct at some point, and the longer you go, the more brutal the correction will be. I'm sorry, just a random anecdote and I've seen a million of these on Reddit. One of the funniest things I saw was a guy that posted on my subreddit, and he defended this to the death, about how, because people keep saying I'm like disconnected when it comes to inflation and wages and blah, blah, blah. Does anybody have a link to the post of the guy that complained that he makes like...
What's your position on this? What's your position on inflation and wages?
Right now, I think that there are some like small issues, but it's dramatically over exaggerated. But some guy was complaining on my subreddit about how he only earned like $150,000 a year, and then when he went through his job and started talking about this guy works from home 2 out of 5 days a week, and I'm like, this guy's life was a fucking dream. And then also people nostalgia trip the past. People will say shit like and especially now that we're getting older, bro. I saw this girl on Twitter who made this tweet about how 20 years ago, you used to be able to work a single job and have an apartment and take care of your kids. And I'm thinking like, okay, hold on, I'm 35. Okay, when I was 17, I worked at McDonald's. I made $5.15 an hour. I needed a roommate. I didn't afford shit on my minimum wage job. What the fuck are you talking about? You think I had an apartment on $5.15 an hour? Also, fuck full time. They wouldn't schedule you more than 24 hours a week. Like, it's wild. And especially now as I'm getting older and I see people talking like, well, these guys used to be able to do this 10 or 15 years. Like, no, they didn't. They're fucking crazy. Like, the average person right now thinks that the average American 50 years ago had a union job that let them pay for college for 2 kids, have 2 vehicles, take a vacation every year, and have a white picket fence for their house. That's what they think the average American family was like. Even though homeownership rates have never been higher, interest rates for the average loan have never been lower, and people's like net worth is increasing at higher rates than ever have been. It's like, it's the difference is like, it's unreal. So
the one way I'd look at this is like you've looked at like CPI index like data, right? Like,
Yeah.
like that, like rents up like 22%, like fucking like.
But the majority of people are renters, although rent has increased a lot. Yeah, but you also have to like,
but
you
also
have to,
energy.
go
You
ahead.
also get
There's a lot of stuff that has
everything,
increased, but you also have to like, you got to break it apart because a lot of it is like not as intuitive, right? Like rent is increasing, that is for sure true, but rent is also increasing in some of the most expensive areas, where also some of the highest wage jobs are. Like, but then you find people that will just say things that are just delusional. People say things like, "Oh yeah, like 100,000 a year is not enough income to live in California anymore." Bullshit. You can live up 100,000 a year in Manhattan if you do it right. What are you telling me? You can't live in any part of California? You can live in LA County on 100,000 a year easy, but people have these like delusional takes because they think that like they'll say like, "Oh, I've seen people post budgets where they say they lived paycheck to paycheck and they're spending $1,000 a month on recreation." I'm like, "What the fuck? You're crazy."
Yeah. I've seen that also. Yeah, but I mean, I do think the climate has gotten way harder for people to live in, like just by virtue of like if we just look at CPI from like 2021 to 2023, right? Like transportation went up like 30%, food restaurants went up like 20%, housing and renting both went up like 20%. I guarantee that wages didn't keep up with it, right? Like objectively, there must be some serious impact from inflation on the economy based on CPI and based on on wage increases.
Yeah, there have been impacts, but when you go to the end of the line and look for them, they're very hard to find. So people will talk about like rising costs of homeownership. They'll talk about rising costs of rental. But then when you actually look at like, okay, well, how many Zoomers, how many Gen Zers have houses compared to how many Millennials, Gen Xers, and Boomers at this age? And then you find out that they're literally right on track. They have the exact same percentage, but you would never guess that. If you were to ask somebody, do you think that the average homeownership rate of Zoomers today is the same as baby boomers? They say no, baby boomers must have way more. That's not even close to true. They're about on track. I think they're ahead of where Gen Xers were, and I think ahead of millennials, although we got fucked in 2007 coming into the housing market. But yeah, it's like the end result, something is not computing here, and there's a lot of different I think it's the hyper reality thing, because people think that in the past everybody had a white picket fence, everybody had a house, everybody had a labor union job, everybody's earning $50 an hour putting together cars. It's just not true.
What I think, so again, this is like something that I wonder how much of this is influenced by like the online like sphere and how much of this is actually in practice. Like when I'm working with people and I'm working with like everyone is feeling that crunch, and they're not like citing like, oh, like this post on Twitter. They're like, I go to Starbucks and like my coffee is like my fucking caramel latte is like $25, right? Like they have like something that happened to them that day.
Listen, this is my issue though. This is my issue, and your example is perfect. Is they'll say that.
Yeah.
But then my question is, okay, how can you still afford the caramel latte? How is it that all this stuff is more expensive, but somehow you're all affording it? Your lifestyles haven't changed. The standards of living are higher than they ever have been. None of these companies are going bankrupt. What's happening?
What's happening is that the CPI objectively on food and beverage increased 30% over 2 years, but wages didn't. Wages went up 2%.
So wages have been growing at insane rates, and they have outpaced inflation over the past, I think, few quarters. CPI did increase a lot. That is true.
There's no way that wages outpaced inflation
for a few quarters. They absolutely have, yeah. And the fastest wage growth was in the bottom of the wages. But that makes sense because unemployment is like 3.2%, right? We're at a huge employment crunch right now. Every fucking place. And I hate to do the anecdotal, but even like a couple years ago, I drive around in Omaha, Nebraska. I'm like hanging out with Nathan. There are fucking signs on Burger King saying like now hiring $14.50 an hour. I'm like, what the fuck? How you what? The employment crunch is real as fuck right now. But I think that when people don't see those increases as much, and they definitely, like, for instance, like if you live in an apartment and you move to another one, like you're not going to notice if they lowered the rent from the last time. But if your rent went up, you sure as fuck are going to notice that, you know? So I think it's harder to see the gains, and it's really easy to see the losses. And then people nostalgia trip over the past, even though their takes aren't even remotely true. And then people have like, they think things today are worse than they were before. I'm curious, if I ask you this question, what do you think is the average student loan debt from somebody that graduates from college who had to take out debt
today?
Yeah,
probably between 40 and 80,000.
Okay. Yeah, I think you're guessing lower than most people would. The answer is $27,000. Like people have an insane take on, and then like people will say things. Here's a great hyper reality example. People will say, if you listen to any self-help podcast, they'll all tell you, don't go to college, do this instead, don't go to college, blah, 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 blah. These same people usually talk about like the elites. Well, if you look at the elites, what the fuck are their kids doing? They're all going to Ivy League schools.
Yeah,
what the fuck? Yeah, wait. What? I thought if the Jews know everything to do, why are they sending all their kids to fucking Harvard and Yale? You're telling my kid to invest in Bitcoin. What the fuck? Like, it doesn't even make sense if you even look at it, you know? Yeah.
Yeah.
Or a really great yesterday with Tate and Andrew Tate and Sneeko and all these other losers that are arguing on these Twitter spaces. They're like, mainstream media is corrupt. We can't trust it anymore. Look at these horrible things they're doing. Like, look at the Hunter Biden laptop story. And then I say, oh, well, the Hunter Biden laptop story, wasn't that suppressed by Twitter, which is kind of alternative media? And wasn't that reported on by the New York Post, which is kind of mainstream media? And then they just like completely fall apart. It doesn't even make sense. But again, it's the hyper reality thing. Nobody left that conversation like reevaluating their positions. They'll just like revamp their talking points and then move on. I'm
interested in going. Like, I understand those guys are beyond the pale, man. I mean, I'm interested in this idea of like, so if we look at like wages increases and equate that to like over the last 2 years, we'd say, okay, well, after COVID, I mean, there was like much more employment, which would kind of justify. Like, what I'm saying is like, I don't. If I look at the average financial state of an American right now, they have something like less than, what is it? Like less than, it's like one emergency away from.
Yeah, that's a bullshit number. Living paycheck to paycheck, but these numbers have never really meant anything.
Having $400 in your bank account doesn't mean anything.
I don't think they have for it. I thought the average was wasn't it like 6,000 or something?
Let's look. Yeah.
There's like these weird, the median savings account balance for all families in the U.S. was $8,000 in 2022. People have these weird things of like living paycheck to paycheck. I don't know what the fuck that means. I don't know if the average person knows anything, but like people have always reported like really high on these numbers. But also, no offense, I'm not trying to sound mean to all these fucking losers in my chat telling me that I'm out of touch. Middle class people don't know what it means to live paycheck to paycheck. Like middle class people don't know what it means to miss a bill. So like when these people can't afford like their third fucking family vacation in a year, or when they're upset because they can only buy 2 of their children brand new cars and they had to buy a used car for the third one, these fucking retards will go online and be like, life is harder than it ever has been. I don't know how people can fucking survive like this. Like we have a family of 5 and we could only afford 3 of the new iPhone 15s. Okay, that's their example of like hardship and living paycheck to paycheck. I'm not fucking joking. That is literally like, I've got people, no offense, but anybody that's telling me that I'm out of touch or I don't understand anything in my YouTube chat, you're watching a fucking politics streamer at 9:16 at night. None of you motherfuckers are on the norm. All of you skew more wealthy than the average demographic in the United States. All of you motherfuckers are wealthy, okay? And I've done demographics for my community. On average, you guys like dramatically out-earn the median U.S. fucking family and everything. But yeah, people are like, and then people, sorry, I'm doomering.
No, it's not. It's okay. I wonder how to shake it out. That I just when I'm talking to people, and I know this is like fucking anecdote again.
It's fine. Like, anecdote is totally fine because I've used some anecdote too, and I do agree with you. Yeah, so go ahead.
When I'm dealing with people in everyday life, and like they're crunched, but they're not crunched because like Andrew Tate is telling them they're crunched. Like they genuinely feel it. They genuinely feel like, fuck, I just went out to a I felt it when I lived in Redmond in Seattle. The price I went out for fucking, I got like 4 fucking falafels, 2 fucking whatever the fucking wrap thing is. I paid like $90. I was like, fuck this. This is fucking insane. And I'm a person that makes a lot of money, like you. And I moved from Seattle to Texas to get away from the price increases there. And I had a real change in my quality of life. Like I was paying, I think, $14,000 a month for half the square footage I'm paying for 3.7 here. That was like a real change. So so what I'm saying is I don't know how to dice this up. Where like because the numbers are the numbers, right? Like and if wages have kept up with CPI, then that's just fucking fact. That's all there is to it. But at the same time, I am talking to dozens and dozens of middle to high class Americans that feel super fucking crunch. I don't know if that's because Netflix has gotten smarter at their subscriptions, and they just and people are like, corporations are better at separating money from people. I don't know why it is, but people are feeling super fucking crunched. I feel a little crunched also.
Sure, my take is going to be that like it's people will tell you that they feel what news commentators tell them to feel. That's what's happening.
But these people aren't being influenced.
I don't believe it. I think they are. I would say they are. I would have to talk to them. But like, so for instance, a really good example of this is like the YouGov poll, how you feel economy is looking.
Well, can we just talk to? Let's just use me. I'll just use me. I'm one of these people that I feel crunched by this. So let's just like go through my like logical.
Well, but now that's. I mean, sure, but
because you said you have to talk to the people. Well, like
sure. Well, I mean, in terms of like, but like you obviously get your news from places, right? You watch a ton of podcasts, and you watch like you're not.
No, I do. But I'm saying I literally feel this in like I go out to eat. It's $75 to $80. I feel like several years ago I would go out to eat. It was $40, $50.
I understand what you're saying, but you understand that if we want to run this argument down, I think you're probably going to be like the worst example for you and probably the best example for me, right?
Why?
Because
I
you
mean,
and I
well,
are earning millions of dollars now in industries that didn't even exist 15 years ago, right? You remember, I know you know this because you said you were in CLG. You remember back in the day when you were a pro gamer that if you got a $500 paycheck a month, you were literally on top of the fucking world? Like that was making it. Yeah. Now, I wipe my ass with if I get $500 on a single YouTube video, I've failed for the fucking day, right? I wipe my ass with $500, right? So like, you and me can complain about shit, but like the opportunities and the jobs and the 7-figure yearly salaries that we're making now, like this didn't even exist 15 years ago. So whatever the fuck is inflated in the economy, we're not even noticing that, right? But I think
But we're a unbelievable small percentage subset of. Well, maybe. So I guess the question to justify that on a macro level is like, are there more people? Are there more millionaires? Are there more people?
I think that people don't realize how good the standard of living is now and what it used to be before. And then also, so like I shot you this poll, right? So like if you look, for instance, at people who think like overall, do you think the economy is getting better or worse? Go to like the 2020 thing and look at how dramatically the opinions change based on like the switch in the election, right? That's unreal. That. Just because, but it's just because of who the president is, right? Yeah. And the reality is the president doesn't even really have that much influence over the direction of the economy. So do you really think that many people's lives got worse right after the election? Or do you think that like, well, fuck, maybe people are reporting more what they are being told to report or what the people on the news stations tell them to feel rather than like what they're actually feeling? This is super anecdotal. And maybe somebody can look this up historically for me and I'll be wrong. I'd be curious if I am because this is an anecdotal peg in my mind, okay? I always bought small cars because when I was working class, I can't afford a big car, okay? And gas is important to me. Like I want to have like a fucking 30, 40 fucking mile to the gallon car that I overinflate the fucking tires on so I don't have to pay a lot of money on gas, okay? I couldn't understand when I was working poor how so many Americans would complain about rising gas prices and they were going up, but I was like, why is it then that so many people are still, why is the Chevy Silverado and the Ford F-150, why are they still the most popular selling cars in America? Why aren't there more people driving around these cuck mini mobiles like me? Where are all of the compact sales? How are Americans still buying huge I don't think the gas price is that big of a fucking deal. I think they're being told it on the radio station because they hear it. I don't actually think at the end of the day it matters that much because if it did, why don't your actions, your behaviors in the real world, why don't they reflect that? Right?
I bought a hybrid Corolla because I wanted to reduce prices on gases. What about Tesla? Like, what about all these
Well, now I don't know. Gas is a lot. Now it's different now because everything with the cars and everything. But I'm just saying, like, there's like 20 years ago, 15 years ago in my life.
Yeah. I mean, dude, like what you just linked me is like amazing. Like that's actually like fucking crazy that like literally every fucking Republican's like, oh, the economy is better. Like on the day that like Trump gets elected, that is very compelling to show that there's sort of a hyper-realism bubble, as you call it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I guess the only question is how much it's affecting. And you say it's affecting everything, and that's when I I tilted my head back and I was like, whoa, that's like sounds like fucking crazy. Because in my day-to-day life as I got offline, I was like, oh, like people are just people. Like and business is going, like things are happening, and people feel the crunch, and like life is life, and that's it. Mm-hmm. You can divorce yourself of this online reality and it doesn't feel like that world exists. It's almost like, in Dungeons and Dragons, you can like cast a spell to like perceive the astral plane.
Yeah.
I feel like you cast that spell and like it's permanently affecting on you. And so you see the overlay, and you're right. You've already shown me you're right on so many different instances. Like I've already changed my mind on so many things from this conversation, and I'm grateful to you for that. The COVID vaccine.
Sure. Also, I could be wrong too. Keep in mind, always.
Well, I guess my question is like just how much it does actually impact. Like is this a one-to-one reality with ours that we've just gotten this layer of shit from social media that has now come on top of our reality, and we can't divorce ourselves from it completely.
What is the question?
The question is at what scale that exists.
I don't know how to measure the scale. I feel like it's getting worse and worse because like the social media is like permeating us in every way constantly. I think probably the biggest, most revolutionary invention hand in hand is like cell phone and internet over the past, I don't know, probably 100 years.
Yeah, of course. Maybe in all of humanity.
Possibly. I don't know. Electricity was a big one. But like in terms of changing our engagement with the world and the reality that we see, I think it's been a massive changer. But nobody talks about that. They talk about feminism or red pill or Palestine, or they always want to blame whatever their pet projects are. But like, holy fuck, the internet and the phone and that being constantly connected to us is insane.
And you don't see a counter movement happening at all. You don't see like people swinging the pendulum back and saying, "Okay, enough of that. Like, let's go."
I don't know. Also, I'm so sorry. Hold on, just a real quick thing, because I got to turn my chat. Hold on. I found a upper middle classer. Okay, I can spot you guys instantaneously. As a working poor person, I know instantaneously what you fucking retards look like. Destiny dumbass questioning why large families drive SUVs. That is the most upper middle class thing I've ever heard in my entire fucking life. Okay, you could squeeze a whole lot of people in a fucking combat car. I drove a GTI for fucking 7 years, and never my I moved my whole I moved my whole apartment from my house from fucking Omaha to LA, and that fucking GTI, and then Aaron shit had to go to fucking truck. Okay, I have absolutely, you can fit a ton of shit in a compact car. The idea that you need a fucking SUV, middle class people be like, I need the SUV to take all of our stuff around, and all of their stuff is like a bag with 2 soccer balls and like 2 sets of pleated fucking shoes. Get the fuck out of here, you fucking retards. I need the huge fucking vehicle because we have a dog. The dog can sit up front, you fucking moron. I've seen people in 2-seater trucks, real trucks, not the 4-seater all-inclusive entertainment systems where you've never touched the cab in your entire fucking life. You see people with 2-seater trucks that can fit like 3 or 4 people up front and the family fucking dog. Okay, get the fuck out of here. You need an SUV for your 4-person families. You can take your kids to fucking hockey practice. Off yourself in a video game. Sorry, go ahead. My bad.
You've never lost it. I remember you driving around that GTI. I rode in it many times. You remember how scared I was of your driving?
Listen,
it goes so
we
fast.
made it, okay?
Just barely. It's a miracle that you could even host this show at all, and you didn't fucking flip that thing over a bridge or some shit while you drove. Jesus Christ.
Anyway. Yeah.
So you've lost all faith in humanity. We're going downhill. It's all over. There's no pendulum swinging back.
I think we just have to change, like, the way that the internet is fucking with us is just like, it's fucking with us. We have to.
So
if nobody's going to talk about that or do anything about that, then we're in a really rough spot.
I'm going on a 5-day retreat in June to meditate with no phone. And
little mini Vipassana or whatever.
Yeah, retreat. I do them every year, and I acknowledge that I'm fucking weird in that. So I'll say, what is... the one time I look over chat, I just see gay. So it's like, okay, I need to stop reading this. It's like, okay, if what fixes it? Like, if the pendulum isn't swinging back, what do we do?
Well, the very basic thing is there just has to be a reward system or a punishment system for getting things wrong. And right now, there is nothing for that. So people will continue to get things wrong. Like, people act in predictable ways. Like, if you go online and you tell people what they want to hear, then you get a whole bunch of rewards for it. If you, like, say the truth and it is incongruent with what your audience wants to hear, there's, like, a huge punishment for that. A really good real-life example of that is look at The Blaze or Ben Shapiro. These are organizations that were highly critical of Donald Trump, but once Donald Trump was elected, you have to toe the line. Otherwise, you're going to, like, lose subscription. So you end up, like, conforming to your audience because you're not rewarded for being truthful or factual. You're rewarded for making people feel good.
Who would punish that but if not the consumers?
I mean, ideally, if the culture changes, the consumers change, that could be one big thing. I don't know how realistic that is, but that's what I push for. So yeah.
Well, that was what I said I thought was happening. That I thought that the pendulum was swinging. I just don't
see that yet. Who knows?
Yeah. So you're hoping though for what I'm saying.
I hope that's what I push for, right? Ideally, yeah.
When
this is an interesting, quick, Queenie Piak is doing swing state polls that, among other things, ask people how about the state of the economy and their personal finances. So, like, excellent or good. People say 35% say that the economy is doing excellent or good, but the personal finances, 61% say are doing.
Whoa.
Yeah. It's interesting, right? Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know, but anyway. Okay, sorry. Yeah, what were you saying before?
I guess I was trying to say that I think that there is a push for this reality. You're saying this reality is not yet here, but you hope that it comes.
Yeah, and I don't think there's a push for it yet because I don't think people even realize that they're living in like a hyper reality. But who knows? We'll see.
What would a push for it look like?
Some kind of accountability mechanisms for being wrong. I think it'd be really cool if there was like a tracker for predictions made by political people that tracked their record of being correct or incorrect when they make calls. I think that would be really interesting. There'd be some accountability.
Couldn't you do this? Because aren't you planning to expand into like sort of a more media?
You'd have to like track it, and that's a whole thing. That's a whole project that I'm not doing right now, but I think it'd be interesting. But yeah.
Why are you what are you aiming for in this like current state of things with yourself? Like I every time I come on here, I'm in here infrequently enough to ask you like what your goals are, and they always change.
I mean, I think I'm roughly
given
doing
this in mind.
similar things. I'm just like trying to be I'm way more heavily researched now than I ever used to be. So now I'm like trying to step up more with debating way more quote unquote educated people in these fields. Trying to have like more serious conversations about that. And I guess I'm like penetrating mainstream a little bit more. So like appearances on like Piers Morgan or, the Ben Shapiro, Jordan Peterson stuff. Like, yeah, I'm just kind of like expanding my audience and doing that. And then trying to be more well read on everything. And then also trying to flex the rhetoric stuff more, trying to like break into other mediums. Like the podcast stuff is like finally happening. I think I've told you that for like 5 years, and finally I have a studio where I'm shooting 2 different shows out of now. So yeah, I'm working my way there.
I understand what you're doing. I mean, I'm asking why you're doing it.
Oh, I don't know. I think I have written this down in a notepad. There's a bunch of things I need to like reconsider, but I need to take like 3 days off and actually like dedicate some time to thinking that. But there's been a lot of like stuff rolling around in my head recently that I'm trying to figure out. So I'll ask me in like a month and I'll probably have a better answer to that.
I will. I think it's really important to understand because you are flying, man. I've known you for over a decade now, I think. And you are when you enter into. I've never done this myself, but I have been around dozens and dozens of people that have made this transition and like guided them and like not guided them. That's arrogant. I've been around them, and when people start to get into the more mainstream, I just want to think through really carefully what I'm saying.
Okay, sure.
Well, because it's directly relevant to you. I don't know if anything I say ever changes your belief system or ever like makes an impact.
It's all of it is part of it. It gets incorporated into the.
It gets sucked into the.
Yeah, into the mind.
The giga mind.
Yeah.
What I would have to say about it, having seen dozens and dozens of people make this transition directly in my business, right, is that if you don't think very intentionally about the direction you're going and why you're doing it. Okay, I have the example. It's like you're swimming in progressively stronger currents.
Waters. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you don't start out with a high level of intentionality, you can get redirected very easily without realizing.
Ever knowing it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I agree with that. 100%. Yeah.
And so for every step that you take, if there's one thing I would ever tell you that's productive, every step that you take at this point, having that time to go back and think about your intentionality is really important. It's much more important than what you were doing years ago.
Yeah, I agree.
Because the current's stronger.
Yeah, for sure. Because it's almost like it sounds kind of cringe or whatever, but like having a mission statement, I think is actually as an individual, I think is incredibly important. Yeah. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, whenever you are making a decision in the future, ideally you're hoping that it's comporting to something and you're moving in a direction. Because like you said, if you're not aware of the currents, the first few steps you take can set you in such an unbelievably different path that like course correcting becomes either impossible or incredibly painful. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a vision board, man. That I redo every few years, and like people be like, oh, dumb, but like it has my values on it. It has like why I'm doing what I'm doing, and I've had to be careful because our business has increased so much over the last couple of years that I can really easily start to dictate this business towards advertising campaigns and towards which are literally influence, right? Like we literally influence people through brands and through the products that we choose to push. There is a lot of ways to make money and do that negatively, right? And push the wrong brands. And it's become extremely easy as my advertising budget has increased to throw money at that. And it's oftentimes more lucrative. That I found myself having to do that more and more often. And the problem is like I can't ever be sure that I'm on the right track and that I'm doing the right thing. But at least as long as you're consciously approaching intentionality, you're doing more than I think 99% of the people that get that intentionality that get that popularity end up with the don't do that intentionality exercise. Because I think that one of the things that causes a lot of these people, you mentioned like earlier in the conversation, these people catch like a train of some kind, like they catch like a trend or whatever, they get like huge. They don't think about their intentionality at all. They ride that as hard as they possibly can, and then they fade out of existence.
Sure.
So there's not just a benefit to yourself and to your audience and to your own like moral code. There's also like an actual benefit, like a longevity benefit.
Yeah. I think, and it's easy. That's easier for me to see, obviously, since I've been doing this for 15 years. But especially for newer people that are growing or whatever, like that 1 to 4 year thing is like really important. Yeah, because it's hard to imagine. You've been doing it for 15
years, but everybody hits a like force multiplier, at some
the
point
inflection
where
points. Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah,
hockey stick. Yeah, like we were working on product at Novo for fucking 2 years, and our revenue didn't increase at all. And then
you did a 1031 exchange, and you got
we benefited really heavily from government programs. Funny enough, not only just like business deductions and everything and carrying that over, but like the way trusts work. Also, I think one of the only reasons we survived in COVID was the PPP loans. Like nobody talks about that. Everybody thinks that all of those loans were just for people that bought cars and shit. But that allowed us to transition Nerd Fusion, which was a talent agency that was failing because the studio closed down in Seattle. We didn't have like COVID didn't literally it was against the law to like do advertising and in a studio. We couldn't get people in. We couldn't do production. Couldn't do anything. We used the PPP loan to transition us over from that to our brand agency and build a product, and we paid it back. And like I don't know anybody that fucking did that, but it worked. Like it legitimately worked. So I think there is something to be said about it.
Yeah. It's chaos is a ladder, unironically, events can reward people that are innovatively thinking and ready to maneuver in the environments when everybody else is too scared to. Yeah.
Well, and what I'm saying is like that. Sorry, to get back to what I was saying. That eventually enabled that hockey stick that happened for us in 2023, and so I think in the exact same way, you are on this like 15-year journey. You're hockey sticking super hard because like in like a year or two, you've gone from like, I remember when Ben Shapiro was like the
final
opus.
destination.
Yeah, he was the final boss, dude. And then like Jordan Peterson was like not even on the radar. You're just like, oh, that guy. And then there you are on YouTube. I fucking opened up my YouTube one day and there you are sitting across from Jordan Peterson. And I'm like, shit, like that is it's surreal, you know? It's cool, man. Congratulations. Like legitimately, like seriously, if anyone, I'm sure you get that fucking shit all the time, but as your friend for a decade, I was thinking about your podcast Bridges. You know what I originally thought it was before Dan explained it? Was you going back to all the people because you know that meme where you burn bridges.
Funny. Yeah, that would be funny.
And I thought that's what Bridges was. I thought that you were going back and you were trying to repair all that shit. And then I saw Richard Lewis on it. I was like, oh, he's just fucking fixing all the fucking shit he fucked up over the years. But I was thinking about it. You and I, we never burned out. Like we've had this like really positive relationship that I personally really value for a decade or more.
Me too. Yeah.
And now seeing you do this, man, I'm so fucking proud of you. Holy fucking shit. I like I've never been able to tell you that more truly than today.
Well, thanks. I appreciate it, my dude.
Seriously.
Yeah. And good for you as well. So, I mean, also, right? I remember talking to you in what is that stupid fucking city near the Lake Tahoe, right? And you were worried because you were selling CLG and you didn't know if you were gonna have to stay on and you weren't sure what your future was gonna look like and you went into content creation and you were actually decently successful doing it and then you transitioned into something completely different and you've been successful doing that. So yeah, that's true too. Yeah, I think people don't get credit for surviving transitions and because people only see you like blow up, right? Or when you're doing really well and doing really, really well. But I think surviving transitions is probably one of the hardest things to do because it's like people will look at the amount of work that you do to go like to 10x your revenue, but like 10xing your revenue is hard work, but it's rewarding and it's enjoyable and it's fun, but nobody knows what it's like to work when you've halved your revenue. Nobody knows what it's like to work with, that's scary. Like me going from like StarCraft to League, that was the hardest part of my career. Not debating fucking Norman Finkelstein. It was having 1,500 concurrent viewers, grinding the fucking Rift, okay? And that was when Draven had Bleed, okay? Those are the hardest fucking, But people look at like, you're like, oh, you're grinding for this debate, doing this. Yeah, I mean, it's fucking huge. Yeah, it's hard and I'm working hard at it, but like it's rewarding. It's way different than, surviving the transitions are always the hardest things for sure.
The transition was hard. My greatest fear was like, I'll never do something that ever equates to CLG. And the thing is, publicly, I won't. I'll never stand on the stage of Madison Square Garden like I did before to 20,000 people, right? Like that's like never going to exist again. But you could still find purpose outside of that.
Yeah.
And dude, I came across that video that we did in the CLG house when we were arguing about how tall we were. Do you remember this shit?
Yeah, I did. I gained an inch. That was an important day of my life.
I fucking had to call in like our whole staff to fucking measure us. It's on YouTube somewhere. I saw it. It got recommended to me.
Oh, Jesus.
So like some 13-year-old video of Destiny and I arguing about, because I learned in that conversation, unfortunately, I was one of these Giga Chads that thought he was like 6 feet tall. I am not. Because I fucking, it's some hilarious video. And then I found that other one where we were getting like super high in Tahoe.
I remember.
Yeah, dude, this is good shit. It's hosted somewhere else, but yeah, it goes way back. I'm glad that this is one of the most like, for me personally, like this is one of the most rewarding friendships I've ever had, simply by virtue that I can kind of just sit tertiarily and like watch your progress as a person and your influence and your impact.
Well,
like,
thanks.
and it's just, yeah, dude, I mean it. Like it's really fucking cool to see, and I'm so grateful for where you've ended up and where you're going.
Cool. Well, hey, I appreciate it. I'm happy.
To many more years.
Yeah, we'll get food next time I'm in your city, and
no, I'm coming to you next. I'm coming to Miami. I'm getting flown in by the Bridges crowd. We'll do this on air.
Oh shit! Wait, is Aerodite already set that up?
Yeah, they
Oh, well,
invited me.
damn. Okay. Well, fuck. There's
I
great
just
food around here. We'll do
I-
that too.
I just need to find it, and then and if you have, I'll do it on a time when you don't have as much going on. I mean, like as much as insofar as we can, so we can probably spend a little bit extra time together.
Yeah. Okay. I got you. Cool.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, brother.
Yeah. I love you. I'll talk to you later. Train. What do you got
Love
real
you,
quick?
man.
Because I'm already like 40 minutes. I was supposed to leave. So what do you got?
Okay. All right.
Oh, nothing.
Wait.
Go ahead.
Oh, you're here? What's
Yeah,
up?
I've been here.
Okay.
I'm listening.
Holy shit! How are you, man?
Good. We'll all catch up later.
Okay. Yeah.
Good
I love you guys.
Lord.
We can chat tomorrow if you want.
All
Yeah.
right.
Have
I
fun.
would. Yeah, I would love to catch up. I
Tomorrow.
hope we do.
Yeah, peace
All
out.
right. Peace out, guys.
Bye.
See you tomorrow.
Later, man.
Okay, I love you guys. I'm super major late. Ripper and a cappuccino, 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 my donors. I will catch you guys next stream tomorrow. Be careful. Don't die.